Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to day number 9 of the stories behind that first time we heard those beloved albums, right? Where we were, when it was, who we were with, what did we think, and how do we feel about these albums all these years later? And maybe it's not all these years later. Maybe it's something we got 2 years ago. Or 50 years ago, right? There's all sorts of years in between when we first were put on this earth and today. And lots of time and space and events happening that involve music and albums and how they impacted our lives. And if that memory, that story behind that very first time we heard it. So today we're going to go back to, I don't know exactly whether it was late 77 or very early 78. One of the two. I'm thinking it was late 1977. And I'm thinking probably late fall or early winter, shortly before the holidays. So I've talked about on a previous show taking those trips into New York City with my dad to go spend the day with him at his office when my brother and I were off from school for whatever. And I kind of think this was like maybe around the Thanksgiving break or something like that in 1977. And so we would go take the train from the Hudson Valley here into New York City down to the Lower East Side of Manhattan. My father worked over near the Brooklyn Bridge, near City Hall, down over that neck of the woods there. And of course, he was like 2 blocks away from J&R Music World. So this is another one of those J&R Music World stories. But what's really great about this story, this is one of those many buying something that you had no idea what it was, never heard it before, but you were a young kid, you had just enough money for one record, and all of a sudden you're into buying music, and you figure you're going to take a chance on something, right? So at the time, late 1977, I've now been a Kiss fan for, a year and a half or something like that. But really, my exposure to other things was fairly limited. I was starting to experiment, like I said, with Paul McCartney and Wings, Steve Miller Band. I believe the Steve Miller Band was probably the first band after Kiss that I jumped on board with, like Book of Dreams and Fly Like an Eagle, and The Joker. I may or may not have probably had an Eagles album. I may have had Hotel California by this time. Maybe a couple of other things, right? But by 1977, I'm starting to now branch out and experiment with other stuff. Really, in 78, I was starting to listen to a lot more things. But in 77, I just had my little handful of bands, not many. And we're going through J&R Music World, and, Dad's kind of letting me do my thing because he's never the biggest music fan. He likes some stuff, but I kind of wonder, while I was going through rack after rack after rack, what was he doing? Because I don't remember that because I was so focused on what I was doing. And I remember going, A, B, C, D, E, O. That's a pretty damn cool album cover. Bright and colorful spaceship thing. Wow. Turn it over. It's got a whole wraparound type of thing, and I notice, I'm like, oh, it's a double album. Do I have enough money in my pocket? I think I could probably swing this, because I think it was on sale, $7.99, maybe $8.99. Don't remember. But I had enough. And I was like, I fell in love with the album cover. I had no idea who the hell the Electric Light Orchestra were. But out of the blue, the album cover, this just grabbed my attention. And I was like, this concept of a double album, right? Because I had Kiss Alive at that point in time. I don't think I had any other double albums at the time, right? So this was again, something kind of new. It's not a live album. What kind of music they play, I don't know. But 11, soon to be 12-year-old me was kind of like, I'm going to take the chance on this because this looks really, really cool. And I remember bringing it home, and Dad was like, you sure that's what you want? I'm like, yeah, that's what I want, right? Go up to the counter, give him my quarters and dollar bills and whatnot. He put it in that yellow bag, right? I'm all psyched. I remember on the train ride home later that day, I remember like opening it up, and I'm like, the big gatefold, the wonderful artwork, and all the other goodies that are on the inside of here. This in the middle of the gatefold. And it wasn't until I got home, they were really starting looking at the liner notes and everything like that. I got completely, fell in love with, all of this minutia, right? So I'm looking at all these guys, and I don't know who any of these dudes are, right? Jeff Lynne, all these different types of guitars he's playing, and listing all these other things. I'm like, I don't know what a Wurlitzer is. I don't know what a mini Moog is. I don't know what any of this. And then I get down to Richard Tandy, and I'm like, and listen to all that. Poly Moog, Mini Moog, I know. ARP 2600, Odyssey, Omni, Sequencer, this, that, and the other thing. Blah, blah. I'm like, oh, it's like, wow. What is all this stuff? Anyway, I finally get home and I put this album on, and I'm like, wow, this ain't nothing like Kiss. This ain't nothing like Steve Miller Band or Paul McCartney and Wings. This is different. Big sweeping melodies. An orchestra. Violin and cello. There's guitar in there. Lots of keyboards. The most amazing vocal harmonies I'd ever heard. But I remember thinking, I was like, wow, it's this guy Jeff Lynne, he's doing some kind of McCartneyisms and things and Beatles and Wings type stuff. I like that, right? And just falling in love with, the first side, right? Turn to Stone, It's Over, Sweet Talking Woman, Across the Border, love that. Night in the City, Starlight, Jungle, love Jungle. Me, I always gravitated towards the rockers, the more up-tempo stuff, because that was me right early on. Standing in the rain, boom, big wheels turning, right? Mr. Blue Sky, just fell in love with that before it became this kind of iconic song, right? Love the Whale, because that was the instrumental on the album. Richard Tandy doing all that wild stuff, all these synthesizer things, very, very cool. Wild West Hero. Birmingham Blues. All of a sudden, there you got Jeff cranking out the Les Paul, right? I fell in love with this, and this is one of the rare instances where I also was somewhat swept away with the whole. It's not a concept album, although there are conceptual songs that kind of tie together. And I love the fact that there was so much variety on this. Again, I didn't know what prog rock was. This isn't really a prog rock album, but there's elements of that here. There are these kind of later 70s disco elements, which there was a lot of Saturday Night Fever, Bee Gees being played around my house. My mom was a fan, so I didn't mind that at all. There's the kind of the rock and roll stuff on here. There's the ballad pop stuff on here. It's a little bit of everything, and I love the production. This is one of the first times where I really fell in love with an album based on the production and how big it sounded and immense and enormous. And that started a love affair with this album that continues to this day. And it's one of those albums too. You go back and you look at some of your favorite early albums, and a lot of times you prefer a side. I think Moving Pictures, always playing side one, right? AC/DC Back in Black, always playing side two, right? There's certain album sides you tend to gravitate to. Led Zeppelin 4, side one, right? Black Sabbath, Paranoid, side one, right? There's certain sides that just that's the one. I used to listen to this, both albums, start to finish, right? I would play the whole thing through. I would never just pop in a side and say, okay, God, that's all I need to hear. This is one of those ones I would always sit down with and kind of experience the whole thing start to finish. I didn't do that all too often. I did a lot of, kind of popping around when I was younger. Until I got a little older, then I just became, you got to listen to albums start to finish. That's it. Always. It's never, no cherry picking, just start to finish. But when I was a kid, certain albums I would just gravitate to a particular side to sometimes. Not with this. Played it all the way through. And I think this album really got me into, A Kiss Alive to an extent as well. But this really got me into this whole concept of the double album, right? And how sometimes you have these albums that are all of a sudden it's whoa, that's great shit. And I remember, to think about how many double albums I had, whether they were live or not. This, Kiss Alive, Rush All the World's a Stage, right? Deep Purple Made in Japan is right around the corner. Song Remains the Same by Zeppelin, right? Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Tommy and Quadrophenia, right? All these albums that I would soon start collecting that were double records. And yeah. Anyway, that's my pick for today. Out of the Blue by the Electric Light Orchestra. Again, once again, thanks to Dad for always either being willing and able to go over to J&R to get him whatever I asked for, or to always take us down there when we came into the city to hang with him for the day. Or even sometimes when we went to visit my grandparents, because my grandparents lived not as close to there, but within like a 20-minute walking distance. They lived on the Lower East Side. Jesus, hold on. As the coughing fit gets ready to start. So even when we would go visit my grandparents, like on a weekend or something like that, he would take my brother and I down to J&R. So, yeah, all right, I'm going to quit this episode because I'm ready to just go into a ridiculous coughing fit here. So anyway, that's my pick. List yours down below. I'll see you tomorrow for another one. This is on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on that notification bell. Yeah, yada, yada, yada. We know everything. I'm not going to say it anymore now because I'm losing it. So thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.